Sovereign Minds, the podcast. Okay, I guess maybe it's the interview today. It's December 29th, 2025. This is going to be our last podcast of 2025. 2026 is a couple of days away, and wow, I don't know. The years keep going by faster and faster, so I'm not sure what to think. But we're down here at the epicenter of freedom at mountaintopmedia.com, and we got a special guest today with us. This is podcast 162. This is J6er Daniel Goodwyn, and so I put danielgoodwyn.com because that's where they can see your information on online. And so that's who we have with us today. We've got Daniel Goodwyn, who was a J6er and was incarcerated, I'm assuming, for quite a while. Maybe you can kind of give us, tell us what's going on, Daniel, and give us a little background. And my first question is, did Trump pardon you?
Yeah, okay, great question. Yes, so Trump did pardon me. Actually, Trump did an executive order that pardoned every J6er that wasn't explicitly listed in a list of about 14 people. And those 14 received a commutation instead of a pardon.
So they commuted their they commuted
right?
their sentences. They got out, but the difference between commuting the sentence and a full pardon is that the pardon is basically absolving you of all your sins, and the commuting of the sentence just says that we're suspending it, I guess.
Not exactly, no. The only person who's ever gotten a pardon of innocence is General Flynn. And me and all the advocacy groups I'm affiliated with, we're actually, and also to include General Flynn himself, we're actually requesting that Trump would give us a pardon of innocence, would actually take us to the state we were at the day before charged, and we would really be effectively absolved. What the pardon does is it takes away, the legal consequences. But
it still says
still as though you're guilty of something.
So
it's
those
really not
charges stay.
ideal, but it's better than, like on the record, it'll still say, that I had those charges and maybe even conviction or whatever, but it says pardoned also on there. Like if you look in the federal database that the police will look at and stuff like that.
So does that have any effect on, if you got in trouble again? Or, I mean, it seems like that doesn't seem ideal, but I guess it's better than sitting in jail, I guess.
It's not ideal. It is definitely better than sitting in jail. I was already out of jail, so it didn't have any change for me, except for just the street cred you get from having a presidential pardon, which is pretty cool. So I was able to, print out my certificate of pardon. So that's cool. I printed out a small version and carry in my wallet too. And then I have a big paper-sized one that I put in a frame. So it's cool, but it's a bit of a novelty for me. For the people who were still in jail, I guess I would have to back up. There was about 200 people who were still in jail when the pardon happened. And afterwards, there were still a few. And we just recently got one J6 got a second pardon because the first one wasn't being basically recognized by still a few more people still in there. And then for those that I mentioned who got commuted and didn't get pardons, they're all out, but they still for the most part actually would like to get that pardon, and it's very negatively impacting their current day lives to not have gotten those pardons. And there's really no reason for them to not have gotten them. Trump did kind of hint that he would do it later, perhaps, maybe after looking into their cases a little bit more, but hadn't gotten around to yet or something. So
is it politically
that's something
correct?
We're still pushing for.
Something politically correct or what? Why wouldn't he give all the pardons? Did he say?
You're going to have to ask Trump. Yeah, he hasn't really. It's not like he wrote a letter saying this is why.
Okay.
So it's anyone's guess. Yeah, I mean, maybe it's politically correct. That's one guess. I don't know what that would mean. I don't know how it would be more politically correct to leave those out and the others not. I don't really understand what that would be about.
I'm not sure. I'm just trying to think of what the reasoning would be, because why would you leave some of them not unpardoned?
Exactly. It's a great question for Trump. If anyone can ask him, I would love to know the answer. But we could speculate for the entire podcast about that, but there's plenty of other things that I don't have to speculate about that I could talk to. For example, you said a former J6er. I would still say that I'm a J6er. I would say maybe formerly a defendant, because I'm not, fighting the court battle on the defense against prosecutors, but actually would like to fight back in taking civil action. So a lot of J6ers uh, have already filed or will file, to basically sue for what's happened to us.
So if you guys have talked to attorneys already and got somebody that's going to come in and help you with your cases, I'm assuming.
The answer for that question would be different depending on who you ask.
Okay.
But the lawyer that I had helping in my criminal defense by the end, I asked if she would be interested in the civil aspect, and she said she would. So I would happily will go with her for that. I personally haven't filed anything yet. There's I want to say maybe around 400 who filed SF95s, which you could probably find more information about that by looking into it rather than talking to me about it. But those were filed by Mark McCloskey, and people know him pretty well from being in St. Louis when the BLM people tried to attack his house. He and his wife came out with
Oh,
some
right. He was
firearms,
the
and they
one
got
with the
a bunch of
AR-15 on the front lawn there.
publicity. Yeah.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, so he's a real American patriot, and there's other lawyers for other people, some in groups and some not, but each filing is an individual filing, so it's
Well,
not
just as
exactly a class action, for example.
well, just maybe as helpful. I don't know if it's actually helpful or not, but I was involved with the group that sued the IRS over the targeting and the BOLO list and Lois Lerner and all of that. And we talked to Jay Sekulow in the ACLJ over at the American Center for Law and Justice. It might be something that you would consider and contact them because they do a lot of this kind of stuff. Just saying.
Oh yeah, that would be awesome if they would help us. It's almost as if they have no idea there's such a thing as J6. Yeah,
Right.
plenty of people have reached out to Jay Sekulow, the ACLJ,
Really?
and frankly, every other big name right wing free speech advocacy group, and we have heard crickets and crickets for 5 years. So yeah, I don't think. Even if they were interested, I think J6ers would probably be insulted at this point.
Wow.
But no, yeah, it's ridiculous.
Well, that's interesting.
Everybody, they fundraise off of all the stories for years and years.
Right.
Many of us, including myself, will send them money. Oh, what a great group. I'll support them for years, thinking that if there's ever a First Amendment situation that I run into, then I'll get my help from these people, right?
Right.
No, absolutely not. It's just a bunch of fake fundraising. They pick the nice, easy to win cases, and they win those, and they leave us to rot in prison. So
wow,
that's my opinion about groups.
Hey, I love your honesty. I mean, that kind of sheds light on some things that I've experienced myself with these people. They did help us, and they helped us a lot. But you're right. They use this for fundraising. They did a video on it. It's called "Targeting Us," and it goes through the whole thing. And they were using it for years. I don't want to get too far afield, but that's an interesting note. I appreciate your candor on that.
Well, we're all very struggling financially right now, and
right?
We could use any fundraising. So where are they? They should be fundraising for us.
Right. Have you guys? I think you guys got Go Send Me.
Give Send Go.
Give Send Go. I'm sorry. Give Send Go fundraiser, and everybody should go to danielgoodwyn.com and read your story of what's going on there a little bit, and the first thing that I see is that X suspended your account on I guess it's X. I was going to say Twitter, but nobody. And then you were kind of miffed because where's Elon at? He's supposed to be on our team a little bit here on the free speech side. What's going on with that? Nothing.
It's just like Jay Sekulow. They talk a big talk and then they go and they ban you.
Interesting. There's some disturbing stuff here. And
who knows?
I don't know. I mean, and I'm no sycophant of any of these guys. I mean, I'm no sycophant of the Trump, the Republicans, nothing. If anything, I was a Ron Paul libertarian back in the day, So I always have an eye of skepticism on all of this stuff because there's a lot of times a different motivation than what you think on some of these cases and on some of these issues. So,
Absolutely. And people notice all the weaponization that's happened with Trump. But really, if you had your eyes open a little earlier, you saw what they were doing to Ron Paul, and they did a lot of the same things.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we knew that the media was in the tank as soon as Ron Paul started running, and I mean, I actually met Ron Paul personally. Who's and I've got one of my prized possessions is an autographed book, Freedom Under Siege, and I got him to autograph it twice when I met him in 84, and then when he was running for president, I think in 2018, I guess it was. So that's the cloth I'm sort of cut from, and that's why I try to do these interviews and do these podcasts with an eye of skepticism, questioning all parties as much as possible to see, to try to figure out what the truth is sometimes is really very difficult.
We watched Ron Paul to fight and fight and fight for freedom and integrity in Congress. And eventually he just gave up because there's no such thing as freedom and integrity in Congress. It's all just political theater.
Well, kabuki is the word. So, yeah, absolutely. All right. So, what happened on J-6? I've done videos on this. I've seen them where they're throwing ordnance into the crowd. I believe they incited the riots, if anything, simply because the crowd was pretty peaceful out there. They weren't even riled up till they started throwing percussion grenades into the crowd. That didn't make the news, which, I mean, you can go back still on my videos on Rumble, and we were just like in shock because it was the police cameras. And so we knew something was up right away. And then later on, we find out there's 254 FBI personnel, I don't know, human resources, whatever you want to call them, in the crowd. From what I seen, I
would call it a low ball. I think there's probably 3 times that many.
Really?
But yeah, they definitely did incite a riot at 1:07 p.m. when they used snipers to shoot into the crowd.
The rubber bullets. I mean, we had pictures of the one guy with the
launched the explosives into the crowd.
Right. Yeah.
When Josh Black got that, through his cheek, that made a lot of people pretty upset. So I think if they hadn't have done that, the people would have remained peaceful. And even the alleged trespassing probably wouldn't have really happened into the building. I think that was a direct result of Dominic Pizzola seeing Josh Black getting shot and then running up those stairs and trying to find cover using that police shield he picked up from the ground.
So there must have been two things.
Really is curious.
I was going to say there must have been two.
I was just going to say if anybody's really curious about what happened that day, they can watch any of those documentaries that we put out. If you go to stophate.com/J6 and click on documentaries, you can see them there. And I especially recommend the one called J6 True Timeline. So you were saying there's basically 2 things.
What I was saying is, it seems to me after studying this for a while, is there was like 2 things going on different sides of the building is all I can come up with, is because it seemed like on the one side they got the rioting and whatever's going on, and on the other side they're giving them tours of the building. I mean, like they were letting them in or something. I mean, I was trying to piece together how that worked. Was it different days or different times a day, or how did that work? Because trespassing is only trespassing if you go in there without permission.
Right. Well, you bring up a really good point, multiple really good points. And I would say the best way to understand would be to watch J6 True Timeline, that movie. It's about an hour long. Because what you've got is about 1 million people coming from the, I guess you could say from the White House, or coming from, Constitution in Pennsylvania.
Where the rally was at the mall.
And then you've got a building, in a pretty big size building and multiple sides, but you've also got about 4 hours worth of the day. And what you see on the news are just little clips here and there. And so you're not really going to get the story unless you watch, like I said, that like an hour long type of a documentary, and you'll realize what's going on. And it kind of is, what's the word? Like a common misconception, but alternatively, maybe you could say that it's just an oversimplification, because you can see little, scuffles with police on the east side or on the west side. It just kind of depends on where your camera's looking, what time of day it is, and stuff like that. But if you did want to overly generalize, you could say that the east side was more peaceful and the west side had more, because they weren't launching grenades or shooting into the crowd on the east side. But on the west side, that's definitely what was happening when you had those big scaffolding and all the people climbed up there. There was a lot of that, and the police were just being very aggressive. And also, people don't really take too much into account that there's so many different agencies. So you've got the Metropolitan Police and you've got the U.S. Capitol Police, and that's just in terms of police, obviously. And then there were other police departments from nearby, but you've got, the National Guard came in at the end, but you had the FBI, you had, CIA, of course, somewhere undercover, any kind of federal agency you can think of, Secret Service. And the one that I really wonder about is the park police, because you've got the National Mall and all that. And you would think they would have been there directing traffic. And it almost seems like a setup that they weren't, because basically Trump had planned for there to be a rally at the Ellipse and then come over to the Capitol grounds and speak from there and basically give another rally. And there were permits for rallies happening on Capitol grounds as well, and that's, anyone can look those up. That's matter of public record. So it's kind of bogus that they say that it's like restricted grounds. But what you'll notice is they had these little fences up on the Capitol around the edges of the Capitol grounds. And if you really know what's up, those actually were set up as kind of little barriers to keep people out of a construction zone, almost like a hard hat area, because they were building these scaffold things so that the inauguration would have, an area for their ceremony coming up, right? That would have been the 20th. So that's
I
kind
was
of getting
wondering about
prepared.
that. I was wondering about that. Why did they have the scaffolding there in the first place? Because there's people all over the scaffolding, and it was. I was thinking maybe it was because they were using it as a funnel, but it makes total sense that they were building stuff for the inauguration.
Right. It was just for the inauguration. It was basically a construction site. And so it's not like the way that they bring it up and try to make it sound in court, like the fences were put there to demarcate a boundary for a federal crime that would happen if you were to trespass beyond them in some place that's an area being protected by the Secret Service for Kamala Harris or Mike Pence or something like that. That's what they made it sound like after the fact.
Right.
I don't think they had even thought of that beforehand, unless it was part of a setup, which I definitely think there was a setup, but that's a separate topic that I'd love to discuss. But I still want to finish what I'm saying, which is that those fences that were there at the beginning, maybe 1,000 people saw that. Out of a million, that's what, 0%? So when I got there, I didn't see any fences, and there was no one directing traffic, like I said. And there were like 5 police there when the first crowd got there. And by the time I was there, there was probably 10,000 people on that grounds, and there were police only up next to the building. And those police were just standing around. By the time I got to the door, it was 3:33 p.m. I meandered in through an open door, and I stayed in the building for less than a minute because the police right inside told me to leave. They were telling people to leave, and I just did what they said. After yelling at them, I just left. And so then I was charged with, you know, uh, basically 4 misdemeanors, and they tracked me down to my house later that month.
How long were you? How long were
In
you in for for four? They charged you with just four misdemeanors?
So let me just say it in order.
Okay.
So they came and did like a raid, like a counterterrorism task force at my parents' house in Texas that I was visiting on the way to my home back in San Francisco. And when they did that, there were 4 misdemeanor charges and took me away to a county jail. And when I was in there, they added on a fifth charge, and that was a 20-year max felony charge called obstruction of an official proceeding. And after about 3 weeks, they let me get like a monitoring ankle bracelet and to stay out pre-trial. And so at that point, I was facing, over 20 years. And eventually I was asked to take a plea deal and plea to that 20-year felony. I told them no. Then they came back and said, if you plead to one of these misdemeanors, then we could drop the 20-year felony. And so then I was facing 1 year at that point. And at the point, by the time it got to my sentencing hearing, I ended up with a 2 months prison sentence. So I had served the first 3 weeks in jail beforehand, pre-trial. Then after my sentencing, and after obviously I did a whole over a year of house arrest. pre-trial. So then I did the 2 months minus the 21 days time served. So finished out two months total of prison time incarcerated, plus the about 13 months of house arrest. And then after that, I had a year of supervised release, and then during that time, they also instituted computer monitoring restriction during the year of supervised release, which we fought in the appeals court, and we won, and they sent it back to the district court. We appealed again, and then they waited out the clock, so it never got ruled on. So it's kind of hard to just answer like, oh, well, how long were you in for? Because it's like, well, what do you mean by
Right.
that? You got the jail, you got the prison, you got the house arrest, you got the supervised release. So now I'm on the other side of that, and then after all that's done, then the pardon comes down.
I see.
But also that 1512 felony charge for other J6ers, they continued fighting it. They got all the way to the Supreme Court, and they actually won. The Supreme Court ruled in their favor on that charge, so that never would have ended up sticking for me, even if I did get go through a trial, even
Right.
if they did convict me on it, which they would have been wrongful. That part wouldn't have stuck. It would have just been the misdemeanor. So I wouldn't have been able to face more than a year. But at the time, it was basically intimidation that you would be facing over 20 years in prison. Just basically ruined my life.
So the obstruction that they were talking about would have been the capital to certify the election, I guess. That's in a different building.
Yeah, exactly. It's very tenuous because when you talk about obstructing an official proceeding, for one thing, how could I obstruct it? They weren't there when I got there, so that doesn't make sense. And then also, obviously, there's no mens rea. I didn't have any intention to do that. But then, thirdly, they're calling it an official proceeding, but it's the certification of the votes is basically ceremonial. It's not, and what we were actually hoping for when we protested would be that they would go and maybe take 10 days to go investigate and see whether or not there was people were trying to ask and for Pence to do the right thing.
Right.
And Trump said Pence didn't have the courage to do what
He could have
should
stopped it. He didn't want to. He's part of the team, and we all kind of seen that after in the aftermath that where he kind of gravitated to and what his political motivations were. But what I'm hearing is that, and I don't know how much your attorney fees and your legal fees were, but I mean, what I'm hearing is the process is the punishment, not just the fact that the charges and everything else. You get raked over the coals, even if you're innocent.
Well, absolutely, the process is a punishment. You do get raked over the coals either way. But if I would have gotten that 20-year felony, that, and the Supreme Court didn't overturn that, that would be the punishment. 20
Right.
years in federal prison. I really did not enjoy that 2 months in federal prison. It was very unpleasant, and especially being uncomfortable around all these criminals who are people who are actually guilty of crimes, but also me being someone that didn't really do anything wrong. I meandered into an open door, and I redressed my grievances at the place where the grievances should be redressed. It's totally an appropriate and normal thing to do, an American thing to do, and yet I was treated like the same way as cartel members and whatever other kind of federal crime that you've got around here. But I actually ended up paying $100,000 in legal fees. I went through like 3 different lawyers. I finally ended up with a patriot who was actually representing me pro bono. But with 1,600 people, we didn't have enough patriot lawyers
Right.
to represent us, and I don't know if any other lawyers, maybe one, actually offered pro bono services. So it was, even though several J6ers and G6 lawyers ended up giving some discounted rates for a lot of people, it was still very expensive. And I would say maybe 1% of the 1,600 J6ers are financially stable right now. The rest of us have basically been ruined by this, and we're just barely keeping afloat right now.
Wow. So I wonder how many people had to go with like public defenders and stuff in the process, because what could you do if you don't have any money and
Yeah,
you're there? What do you do?
I'll end up using those, and a lot of people regretted it, but they maybe didn't have another option. But a lot of people, they maybe use not a public defender, and then after the fact thought they regretted not using a public defender because they felt like they got the same kind of representation they would have.
Right.
So it's kind of a mixed bag. but oftentimes they're being employed by the same, the prosecutors are being employed by the same people as the defenders, so it's kind of like they're on the same team in a sense.
Yeah, no, I get it. I mean, I've got a little bit of legal training and background and stuff, and mostly in the area of taxation. But yeah, I understand what happens, and once they're all a part of the process, the legal team. Their allegiance is to the institution, to the government, typically, not to their clients.
Yeah, I mean it's definitely a generalization. There's some good ones who really have good ethics, but it's hard to find, and especially you're dealing with DC, and it's the swamp. You
Right.
have people left wing, right wing, they're all in the swamp.
Yeah, no, I get it, especially at DC. That's where everything was being conducted, was in DC.
Yeah, and it wasn't great with the lawyers. It was even worse, with the prosecutors, obviously, but with the judges, they were all completely biased, no matter if they were Republican or Democrat appointed. And the judges were not even close to even as biased as the juries. The juries were terribly biased, and we weren't able to get anywhere around that.
So, wow. I mean, there's so much to talk about here. We might have to have you back. We got a few minutes left, but uh, I mean, we've barely scratched the surface on some of these things. I mean, I'd kind of like to get your opinion on Ashley Babbitt, for example, and I mean the Capitol Police officer, that shot her. I mean, nothing happened to him. He basically murdered an unarmed civilian, and nothing happened.
Yeah,
And
no, I mean, he definitely murdered her, and she's one of four that I feel like were murdered that day, even five if you count Brian Sicknick, who died the next day from a stroke, because the police refused to render aid to the people who were dying that day. There were not. Now, Ashley Babbitt got shot. That was pretty deliberate. Roseanne Boylan was trampled and gassed and then beaten with some sort of a stick. So that was definitely on
so
purpose.
that, what,
But
wait, well,
the
stop there,
police
stop,
department.
stop there for just a second, because I went on to Brave just to see and what it had to say on this, and I was shocked when I said it says Roseanne Boylan died from an accidental overdose of amphetamines, according to the Washington D.C. medical examiner. I've seen the tape where she was getting beat with a stick. I mean, I don't understand how that is, but that's the story, evidently, now, that she died from an overdose of amphetamines.
That was the story from the beginning because they
Was it?
just lie. They make things up. They said that Brian Sicknick was killed by being hit in the head with a fire extinguisher. You go watch all the video footage, it didn't even happen. So they just make stuff up. And beyond that, Kevin Greason and Benjamin Phillips, they said they died from heart attacks.
Yeah.
Well, maybe so, but there was a bunch of grenades going off around Kevin Greason whenever his supposed heart attack was induced. So uh, not only that, but the emergency services were kind of hindered because the police were like afraid of COVID-19 or something. You can go back and look at what they said
Jeez.
about all that.
Unbelievable. Well, have you got anything you want to get out, Daniel, before we have to cut off? But I've got other commitments I got to do. But man, I really appreciate you coming on. I really appreciate your honesty in all of this. And like I say, have you got anything you want to add to this thing? And maybe we can
Oh,
have you back.
yes. I've got a lot I want to add. People can go to my website, danielgoodwyn.com. Goodwyn is spelled with a Y, not an I. You can find my social media accounts and follow me there because you can see a lot of the things I say. Also, stophate.com/J6. You can also follow all our socials on Stop Hate, but we have on our J6 page not only the documentaries, we've got a list of fundraisers that we try to keep relatively up to date. People are in a lot of need. If you guys can help spread the word about the documentary so people know the truth, can help spread the word about the fundraiser so people can get financial help, that would help a lot. We have a lot of J6ers heading back to DC for the annual memorial coming up next week or the week after that, whatever it is, January 6th. So your eyes open for that, and if anybody wants to be there, I'm sure they could show up. So
Maybe we
yeah,
can
definitely.
get all of those links plugged in down below after the interview and stuff, and get you up there. Maybe we can get some funding and help you out here as much as we possibly can.
Oh yeah, it's a great start, and you can also see other interviews I've been on if you just go on my website and go down to the activism part. Yeah, I'm happy to talk about all kinds of things. Even if you go to the Stop Hate J6 page, we've got different info about the Proud Boys, the Oath Keepers, Antifa, secret agents. All kinds of different aspects of January 6th that I'm happy to discuss. And we've done a lot of research, and obviously the best resources to understand what's going on at the beginning would be watching those about 5 different documentaries we put out. And then if you still are so interested in investigating what happened that day, we've got a lot more tools on the website that people can use.
I will do my homework before we have another conversation, and it'll be a little more.
I'd love to come back on.
Up to speed. Yeah, absolutely. So I guess we're done, Leslie. Is that where we're at? All right. Well, good talking to you, Daniel, and we hope to talk to you in the future. And government is not reason. It is not eloquence. It is force, and force like fire is a dangerous servant and a fearful master. And we'll see you on the next one.